Okay, in this short video, I'm going to go through pages 12 to 13, which you read for the online portion of class, and they're titled Adapting to New Technologies. Here I have the 4 key points that I want you to get out of that, and we're going to go through each of these. So the big thing that you need to know about adapting to new technologies, especially if new technologies are being used in the workplace, or in this case, we're going to talk a lot about Twitter and our use of Twitter, is you need to experiment. You have to play and see what the technologies do. In a lot of cases, workplaces will give you test systems for you to play with all of the different functionality before a system goes live. So anything that you mess up can just be erased. It's no problem. You really need to remove the ties that you have to technology to determine what is your base need. So in this case, let's talk about Twitter. So what I need from students in a hybrid class is for them to work together, for them to form groups, and for them to learn from each other. So I have a few different ways I can do that with technology. Discussion boards, shared documents, and in my case, I specifically used Twitter. So Twitter, with its short functionality and its huge list of notes that all of the students leave, forms, in my opinion, a better space for students to interact with each other, for students to get their ideas out there, and then for you guys to develop learning from your peers as well as learning from me. It's an easy way for me to jump into the conversation, and it's an easy way for a threaded conversation to appear in a huge list. The big thing is you can always Google for help. Using Google as the search function is really, really, really powerful, especially in the workforce. And then as a last resort backup, there are free online courses. Most of them are called MOOCs, or massive open online courses that you can enroll in to build up your base knowledge. So if for some reason you need to learn HTML coding, you can enroll in a free course that'll teach that to you. You can pay for the course if you want the certificate at the end, or if you need that certification for anything job related, which they might then reimburse you for. But for the most part, enrolling in the course is free. They let you download all sorts of resources. So I enrolled in a course over the summer from FutureLearn all about basically data mining Twitter, so I can data mine everything that you guys are doing as part of ensuring that you are engaging in solid conversation. So then I downloaded all of the documents from that course that showed me here's how to use the program. So then now I can refer to them whenever I need to. Okay, so let's go through these 4 in 2 different systems to give you a better idea of what I'm talking about when we start to apply these ideas. Okay, the first document that I want to go through is Google Doc. So when I was a grad student, Google Doc and the functionality behind Google Doc was still a fairly new technology, especially the idea of sharing. We still had a lot of issues with privacy and what can be private and what can't be private. And so for the most part, businesses relied on emailing drafts to each other, making changes, and then emailing it to the next person, making changes, then emailing it to the next person. In this case, Google Docs allows companies to all mass edit a document. So as part of my grad studies, when I was taking an educational technology course, one of the things that we talked about was what can be done here, especially within the classroom. So the professor opened up a Google document and all of the students logged into that Google document. And then because we were a room full of grad students, mass panic basically happened. Students were overwriting other students. Students were putting up quotes from movies, none of which had to do with pushing forward kind of the theme of here's how we can collaborate in this particular space. So from that point forward, I kind of had a negative idea of how Google Documents can be used. Then while I was working in my job, we moved offices. And moving offices changes the technology needs, and it changes how you have to understand how jobs function. And this is really important from a technology writing standpoint. So my job was to create business documents and user guides. And what I ended up doing was finding new kinds of technology that would allow the employees to do their jobs better, because that is what the business documents do. So what happened in this particular office is we went from having a square to this really long rectangle where the front office and where students came in was over here, and then all of the people who could affect the files were back here. This is kind of a large distance for somebody to walk if you have a huge line of students and you have telephones ringing. We had 3 employees, and even for 3 employees during our busiest times, it was next to impossible for them to walk back. And so a complaint I heard from them often is, I need to communicate information, but I don't want to stand there and wait, and I don't want to have to walk back and leave my post, and I don't want the students to walk in and join this line and not see anybody at the front, because then they get angry and they complain, even though I was busy working. And so I said, what if we got people to use Google Docs the right way? And so I created a Google Doc that the front and the back employees all logged into. Notes could be made from the front house so that they could have the student, they could leave them with an answer immediately. They could say, your complaint, your issue, your file is going to be processed immediately. I've made a note. They're aware of it. They're going to take care of it. Thanks for coming in. Have a nice day. That's so much faster than walking the 50 feet that it took to walk over to somebody to stand there and wait to explain the problem. They can do it all through a Google document. It cut down the amount of time required to assist a student by more than half. And we had a record of who was assisting. The back staff could then rotate who was in charge and who was responsible for checking into that so that nobody ever stepped on anybody else's toes with pulling the same file and attempting to work on it at the same time. So we created more efficient ways of working through a system that when I'd been introduced to it was mass anarchy. So there are ways of using these systems if we get at, how can we experiment with this? So the first iteration of the Google Doc was not perfect. We found a way to make it work. But I also took a step back and said, okay, what technology do we have available? But before I even answer that question, what is the actual need? Why is the front staff, especially the front service staff, why are they so unhappy? And how can I make them happier? And how can the people who need to make the changes on those files help them better? Once I started answering those questions, then I could answer, though, what technology do we have available and what can actually assist them? So remember to take a step back and then really think about what is it that we can do and how can this technology support? The last piece of technology I want to talk about, especially with experimenting, is Twitter. So the Twitter posts are basically for you to experiment with writing and for you to practice writing. All of your tweets do not need to be perfect. You need to figure out a way to get along with your classmates and a way to go through. So the way that I typically use Twitter for the classroom is I search for the hashtag here, and you can see I've searched for all of their hashtags. And then when you open them up, you'll see a list of everybody who's in the class. The first thing that pulls up in the web version is the top. If we switch it to live, you'll get everybody's feed. Top is determined based on the number of followers that a particular person has are going to appear in the top list. Once I've gone through these, one of the things that I like to think about and one of the things that I want you guys to experiment with is what is the best thing to be put into your post. So I've already used the photo feature, and there are photos that you can put out there. There are GIFs that you can include, and several of you have already done this, and there are polls that can be used for very specific reasons and to help us talk about information in a very specific way. So experiment with the affordances of this technology that are given to you so you can see how can you best use Twitter to support your learning in this class so that you can get your dream job, because that's always the ultimate. So as a final reminder, the 4 key points I want you to understand from adapting new technologies is to experiment, to remove your ties to technology so you can determine your base needs and then integrate technology back into that discussion. Google if you need any help. Google is a fantastic resource. And if all else fails, enroll in a free course. You can find all of this information to support what you need, and this is more going forward in the workforce. You can find the information that you need so that you can perform your job better. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me or send me a tweet. I'll see you guys online.